good there, bud. Looking good.
Plenty of oil pressure.
Oh yeah, we're good. We're good on that. 100%.
The thermostat is a small diaphragm spring that opens a valve to allow coolant into the radiator and cool the engine down when it reaches a certain temperature. Thermostats are very simple things and are among the easiest of components to replace on the AMC 2.5 or 4.0 engines. It's the exact same process for either one, and they even share the same part numbers and specifications. For all years of both engines, they use a 195-degree thermostat from the factory, and that's what I'm going to be installing. You may be tempted to use a lower temp thermostat, which allows the coolant to start flowing at a lower temperature, thus keeping your engine cooler. However, even if you're trying to chase down overheating issues, a lower temperature thermostat is never the correct way to deal with these problems, as the engine will never get up to operating parameters, which demolishes your already laughable MPG numbers, not to mention the heater can't work if the engine isn't warm. A Mopar 195-degree thermostat is the only way to go, linked in the description. I need to replace the thermostat in both Jeeps today, as this one is not a 195-degree and this one has failed and stuck open. Usually thermostats are fail-safe, meaning when they reach the end of their life, they'll stick in the open position, which allows coolant to flow at all times. That's a good thing because it prevents the engine from overheating and or exploding. But not a good thing because cold engines perform terribly. If your heater has been noticeably weak, the temp gauge never reaches 210, and you've been getting worse than normal fuel economy, the number one culprit is the thermostat. You may have also been directed here by another video from Future Waymid. If you need to replace your radiator or water pump, it's an excellent time to also replace the thermostat, if only for peace of mind.
For this job, we're only going to need a 1/2-inch socket, some pliers, a little scraper tool, obviously a little bit of coolant, and a catch can. Optionally, you might need some gasket sealer, but it's not required. And then, of course, your new thermostat.
The thermostat is located directly at the front of the engine under this housing, with the engine entirely cooled down and a catch can of some sort underneath. Remove the two hoses coming off it. You could totally drain the coolant in a much more sophisticated way if you want, but you know, it'll evaporate off eventually. On 1995 and newer models, the temperature sensor is threaded into the housing. Simply unplug it and then remove the two bolts mounting the housing to the cylinder head. On older 4.0s or those in Wranglers, you might want to remove or loosen the serpentine belt to get access to the lower bolt, but it is entirely possible without messing with the belt. The thermostat then pops out of place. Next, being careful not to get any debris inside the engine, scrape off and clean the mating surface where the gasket sits on both the engine and thermostat housing. When it's as clear as you can get it, slide the new thermostat into place. The spring should go inside the engine with the triangle-looking pointy side facing outwards. If it has a weep hole, that goes on the top. The thermostat only sits on a thin ledge here, and when putting the housing back on, it can fall out somewhat, which we don't want for various reasons. A common trick is to just use some gasket sealer to hold it in place, but you shouldn't have a problem if your hands are any more stable than my ex's Future. Now, the paper gasket you probably have usually isn't enough to seal this watertight. I've never had good luck with paper gaskets on coolant passages, so either get some RTV specifically designed for coolant, or coat the paper gasket with some sealer. If you've chosen RTV, just make a thin solid bead around the entire mating surface of the housing, and be extra sure it's not going to spread into the cooling passages, as chunks of it can break off and clog your radiator. Press the housing on with the lower bolt in place to help keep everything aligned, being steady and sure not to knock the thermostat out of place. Tighten the two bolts in a pattern to only 15 foot-pounds, which is not very tight at all. You can then reattach the hoses and plug in the temperature sensor. Let the gasket sealer or RTV dry for however long it says to, and then put some coolant in it. Start the engine and let it warm up to operating temperature. That would be 195 to 210 degrees, and since it's January in Wisconsin, the 4.0 will never get much higher than this, but that's still better than no heat.
And boom, just like that, the belt's dry.
Make sure to check for leaks, and you're done. Keep an eye on coolant level for the coming days, and if everything's good, then you're good, and now you're ready to do an engine swap.